There are people, no geniuses in this world, with the ability to correlate colors, tastes, and smells with numbers and letters. They have the ability to do what no normal human can. However, this level of advancement comes with a price. You may be left with a drastic inability to socialize and/or interact with the rest of the normal human race, or even worse. With this new ability comes great opportunities for advancement as well as grave setbacks. If you had the choice, would you take it? There are some who had no choice in the way they are. In this podcast, young investigators Khalil McGirt, Yaa Forimafo, and Shi Shioye venture off into the unknown disorder, synesthesia. This is what they found. One day in the vortex of YouTube, I stumbled upon a man named Daniel Tammet, who was an autistic savant with a disorder called synesthesia. He's actually known for memorizing over 22,000 numbers of pi and learning the Icelandic language in a week, which is pretty intense because I've heard the Icelandic people find the language difficult themselves. Isn't that cool, guys?
Yeah, it is. But one thing, what is synesthesia?
Well, synesthesia is a disorder in which an individual's, let's say, sense of smell is triggered by seeing an object. This is by no means limited to that. Since there are 5 senses, the combinations are infinite. Someone might see colors being emitted from a piano as it's being keyed, or someone might taste something as a result of touching an object.
So, where was this disease found?
I can actually answer that. Though the origins of synesthesia remain unclear, they date back to Sir Isaac Newton, who created a musical keyboard toy that flashed different colors on a screen for different notes keyed. It's unsure when synesthesia was first recognized. However, it was Sir Francis Galton, who was actually the cousin of Darwin, the evolutionist guy, it was him who conducted the first scientific study of synesthesia in the 1890s. He published a short article on synesthesia in the journal Nature, which outlined his findings on synesthesia. He focused on 2 types of synesthesia: auditory visual synesthesia, which is where sounds evoke color, and grapheme color synesthesia, which is where printed numbers and letters have inherently different colors.
We asked Brian a bit about his research, and this is what he said.
My research that I'm doing right now is to look at the anatomy of the brains of synesthetes. So there's a special way you can measure the big connections in someone's brain. You stick them in an MRI machine, in like one of those big brain imaging, and you can look at water flow within the brain, and water moves better. So it's like, if you're going to pour a bunch of water down the freeway, water's going to flow down the road as opposed to like across the road. And we did this for about 20 synesthetes. Overall, their brains are pretty much exactly the same. If you look at the entire brain as just one individual number, so you look at all the connections in the brain together and you average them all together and you get one number out of it, synesthetes look the same.
Brian then goes on to describe the different variations of synesthesia, like
pain that triggers colors, pain that triggers different flavors in the mouth, pain that triggers different smells.
Carol Steen, who is the co-founder of the American Synesthesia Association, has color pain synesthesia. When asked to talk about her synesthesia, she states,
synesthesia being distinctly unpleasant. I was in the dentist, and he was drilling, and I don't like the sound of the drill, but the color orange that completely flooded my vision, I couldn't shut my eyes because they were already shut.
So, with pain-associated synesthesia, like what Carol has, what are the treatment options?
You talk them into thinking that they need treatment. So there, you're not getting treatment for synesthesia, you'd be getting treatment for chronic pain, but if the pain isn't chronic, then you don't need treatment.
But not to be scared, folks, there's also different types of synesthesia that don't involve pain, such as grapheme color synesthesia, which is the most common type. A person who experiences this associates letters or numbers with specific colors. Usually 2 people won't report the same colors for letters and numbers. However, studies have shown that many synesthetes will see some letters in the same way. For example, A might be the color fuchsia, while B is a bright red. There are also types of synesthesia where a sound can trigger a visual response. So, for example, earlier we mentioned someone keying a piano. Well, they might see the color red emitting from the keyboard. Another type of synesthesia, which is very common, is called personification. It's also known as ordinal linguistic personification, or OLP. So, an individual who has this will associate order sequences, such as the alphabet, with a personality. For example, someone might see the letter N as gloomy and sad, while the letter S looks very sinister. There aren't really treatment options for these forms of synesthesia because many synesthetes find that they are actually really gifted and they're not actually stopped from living. So, is synesthesia an inherited disorder?
Well, there haven't been enough studies to fully categorize synesthesia as a genetic disorder, although the studies that have been conducted have found hints at that notion. For example, a study of audiovisual synesthesia conducted by the Wellcome Trust Center for Human Genetics at the University of Oxford reveals evidence of linkage to chromosomes 2q24, 5q33, 6p12, and 12p12. Furthermore, studies conducted by Ramachandran, a neuroscientist, and his colleague Hubbard state that in spite of the variability in the estimates of the prevalence of synesthesia, almost every study of synesthesia has agreed that synesthesia seems to run in families. Francis Galton in 1880 was the first to notice this. Many of his subjects had relatives who were also synesthetic. Simon Baron Cohen, a professor of developmental psychopathology at the University of Cambridge, conducted a more formal survey to determine the familiarity of synesthesia. His study found that synesthesia is more common in females than in males, with a 6-to-1 ratio. Furthermore, approximately one-third of respondents had known family members who were also synesthetic. Family studies show that the trait seems to be passed along the X chromosome.
Occasionally, the synesthete may suffer from sensory overload. Sometimes things may get a little much, but then again, who doesn't get overwhelmed? Overall, the life expectancy of a synesthete is most likely the same as a non-synesthete.
What is sensory overload?
Sensory overload is a condition where one or more of the senses are strained. So, for example, you could be typing right now and I'm just buzzing in your ear while Kali is on the other side trying to have a conversation with you. So, for a synesthete,
So it's basically like your senses are overwhelmed, so you have multiple senses attacking you at one time.
Exactly.
So, hold on. How does a synesthete's brain work?
Well, Brian can answer that for you.
You know, let's say you're driving from Durham to California, and that's like Route 40, right? So in the normal U.S. brain, you can go straight from Durham, you can go straight from North Carolina to California, and maybe you can get off in Kentucky, you can get off in I think Iowa's too far north or something, maybe you can get off in Kansas, I don't know all the states, right? In a synesthete's brain, you can get off in every single state and every single city. So there's just more off-ramps. And what that means is when you're driving in your car, if all you did is drive straight from North Carolina to California, you might get there more directly and you might get there faster, but you met less people along the way, right? If you get off at every other stop, you're going to end up, your route's going to be a little more indirect, but you're going to make more connections along the way, right?
Oh, right. Okay.
The point is that synesthetes have brains that are connected differently than non-synesthetes. And the way that they're connected is that, again, back to this idea of all these different cities, synesthetes seem to have a lot more branching in their connections. So in a brain, you've got about 100 billion cells, and you've got about 100 trillion connections between those cells. Synesthetes don't necessarily have more cells, but what they have is connections between more of the cells. So here, this is what it looks like. Put your hands together overlapping. So stick your palms together and make your 5 fingers overlap each other perfectly. That's a normal brain. Now take your top hand that's facing you and just rotate it slightly.
Oh, those are the connections to the brain of a synesthete.
This concludes our series on the synesthetic experience, brought to you by the Synesthesia News team.
Hey, this is Khalil McGirt from the Synesthetic Experience telling you about synesthesia. According to the American Psychology Association, research suggests that about 1 in 2,000 people are synesthetes, and some experts suspect that as many as 1 in 300 people have some variation of this condition. The stats suggest that synesthesia is very common, so it would make sense for most people to know about it. However, That is not the case. Synesthesia is relatively unknown to most of the human population. Research into this disorder is relatively young. One way to change this is to increase awareness. It is important for synesthetes to know that while they are different in terms of brain wiring, they are not disabled. Furthermore, more people are needed in research. There are surveys and tests for people in the public to find out a bit about their form of synesthesia. The Synesthesia Battery is a great site. For more information about synesthesia, contact the American Synesthesia Association or the International Synesthesia Association. Visit synesthete.org to take the Synesthesia Battery. And remember, only you, the public, as well as the synesthete, can help unlock the mystery of synesthesia.